In the early hours of June 20th, 2004, a frightened woman called emergency services to report an attack in her home. That woman was Jacqueline Crymble. She claimed that she and her husband, Paul Crymble, had been beaten up by masked men and that the men had taken her husband. Emergency responders immediately swung into action, but there seemed to be more to the story than Jacqueline was letting on. Unknown to the investigators, the truth about what happened that fateful morning was carefully concealed in the crime scene. What happened to Paul Crymble, and why was his wife Jacqueline hiding? On the night of June 19, 2004, Paul and Jacqueline Crymble went to have drinks at a bar. Paul wasn't much of a drinker, but his wife was. People who saw the couple that night noted that Jacqueline seemed determined to get her husband drunk. The couple's relationship had been rocky for some time. Jacqueline was having an affair, and Paul was aware of it. Jacqueline often threatened to leave Paul and take the children with her. She also told him she would stop him from seeing them, and so to prevent this, Paul turned a blind eye to her extramarital affair. Paul and Jacqueline first met when they were in high school. Paul was 3 years older. He was calm, shy, and had a religious background, while Jacqueline, often called Jackie, was the complete opposite. Right from when she was a child, Jackie was known to be aggressive, defiant, and erratic, which is why people were surprised when they began dating. When they got together, everyone who knew Jacqueline and Paul seemed to agree that they didn't seem like a good fit. Jackie was always one to start a conflict, and she never shied away from using violence to her advantage. Paul, on the other hand, was peaceful and avoided the use of violence, so Jacqueline almost always got her way. After so many years of being married, Paul still remained true to his peaceful nature. Unknown to him, this decision would cost him his life. That night, the couple stayed at the bar till it was past midnight. Jackie had succeeded in getting Paul drunk and was seen leading him out of the bar. Surveillance cameras captured them leaving the bar together, and that was the last time Paul was seen before Jackie called the police to report the attack. She informed the police that 3 masked men had broken into their home, assaulted her and her husband, and tied them up. The attackers demanded money or illegal substances, but when they realized that the couple had nothing to offer, they decided to leave. Before departing, however, the men stole their car and kidnapped Paul. When emergency responders arrived at the house, they found Jackie with her hands bound at her back. Surprisingly, Jackie had no wounds or marks on her body, which seemed a bit off considering the fact that she had earlier stated that the attackers had beaten her and her husband. She also told investigators that she and Paul were just returning from the bar that night and were trying to open the door when the masked men jumped out and pushed them into the house. Thankfully, their 2 children were not home that night. They had gone to their grandparents' house to spend the weekend. Jackie had gotten pregnant for Paul at the age of 17 while still in high school. Paul, who was 20 at the time, immediately took responsibility and decided to marry her. They got married in 1992, and in 1993, they welcomed their daughter Danielle. After 6 years of marriage, the couple welcomed their second child, a son named Adam. By the year 2000, Paul was working as a senior mechanical engineer, while Jackie chose to be a stay-at-home wife. She claimed it was better for her to manage the home and raise the kids since she was so good at it, but that was not the truth. Jackie was, in fact, not a good mother to her children. She was aggressive toward them and anyone else who dared to cross her path. The family lived in a small town, and the people in their neighborhood did their best to stay out of Jackie's way. Jackie was also famous for spending her evenings at different bars, drinking and causing trouble wherever she went. She was often spotted in the company of different men and was always ready for a fight. Those closest to the couple advised Paul to get a divorce, but he did not want to leave his children in Jackie's care. This may have also been his reason for going out with her and trying to see if they could work things out. Jackie told the investigators that the attackers had hit Paul several times and then strangled him with a plastic bag. She claimed that after the attackers left with her husband, she struggled to get to the phone and dialed the number using her tongue. Although the investigators had no cause to disbelieve her at the time, they noted that she was mysteriously calm for someone who had experienced all that she had told them. The search for Paul and the couple's car began immediately, while experts combed the crime scene in search of clues that could lead them to the attackers. When authorities questioned Jackie about the attackers and their appearance, she had no useful information to give them. She claimed she could not remember what the attackers were wearing or if they had any distinguishing features. All she knew was that there were 3 in number and were all men. This seemed odd, but at first, no one thought much of it. On Monday, June 21, 2004, police found the couple's car 3 miles away from their house. The car was in a bad state, but nothing could have prepared the investigators for the sight that awaited them inside the vehicle. In the trunk of the car, they discovered the lifeless and mutilated body of 35-year-old Paul Crymble. His hands and feet were bound, and his body was covered in bruises, indicating that he had been beaten and tortured. Jackie's calm reaction to the news of her husband's death was as suspicious as it was alarming. She tried to play the role of a grieving widow, but everyone could see through her. She appeared to be more interested in retrieving the car than mourning her husband. As the investigation progressed, the couple's friends, family, and neighbors were interrogated by the police, and they all had sour things to say about Jackie. It didn't take long for it to come to light that she'd been having an affair with a man named Roger Ferguson for months. People in town had seen Roger and Jackie at different spots in town drinking together. Neighbors also confirmed that Roger visited her home when Paul was at work. With all the information they had gathered, investigators stopped looking at Jackie as a victim, but as a possible suspect. Her lover Roger also became a possible accomplice. Armed with this new information, the police began to dissect Jackie's story of the attack and discovered many discrepancies. Firstly, they lived in a small town where no such incident had ever taken place. Moreover, no one in the town had seen the strange men around, nor did the men leave any trace of their presence. Secondly, investigators found that Paul had a life insurance policy that would pay a huge sum of money in the event of his death. Jackie was set to receive up to 300,000 pounds sterling from the insurance company. At this point, the authorities believed they had uncovered Jackie's motive, but the investigation was far from over. Slowly, the crime scene began to reveal more hidden truths that would help solve the case. When investigators first arrived at the house, Jackie told them she dialed the number using her tongue because she was tied up. Laboratory results confirmed this, because traces of her saliva were found on the phone. However, the phone had been lying in an upside-down position on the coffee table when emergency responders first arrived. There was no way Jackie could have dropped the phone in that position after the call if her hands were truly tied behind her back. A search of the couple's home computer revealed that someone had been doing research on how life insurance worked, the pay amounts, and what procedures to follow in the event of a policyholder's death. When asked about the searches, Jackie claimed she had no idea about it. Since Jackie's lover, Roger, had also become a person of interest, it didn't take long for the police to show up at his doorstep. They asked him questions about his whereabouts on the night of the attack, and he responded saying he was homesick. His mother corroborated this story, giving him a solid alibi. However, investigators decided to track his cell phone movement from that night, and they discovered something shocking. They found that Roger was not at home on the night of the attack as he claimed. Instead, he was at the Crymble house where he stayed for several hours. To make matters worse, investigators found out that Roger and Jackie had visited a car dealership together days after Paul's death and made inquiries about an SUV. At this point, the authorities suspected that the lovers had carefully planned the murder and hoped to spend the insurance money together. This explained why Jackie took her children to their grandparents for the weekend. It also explained why she suddenly invited her husband to go out for drinks that night and why she intentionally got him drunk. After thoroughly examining the crime scene, investigators found several pieces of evidence that incriminated Jackie and her lover in the death of Paul. First, they found a cigarette butt in the trash can that had traces of Roger's saliva on it. They found his fingerprints on the cable ties used to tie Jackie's hands, as well as those used to bind Paul's hands and feet. The plastic bag used to strangle Paul had sweat and oil traces which belonged to both Jackie and Roger. Investigators also found that there was a third party in the crime, a friend of Roger's named Colin Robinson. Colin initially denied his involvement in the crime, but later confessed that he had helped the lovers carry Paul's lifeless body to the car. He said they drove to a deserted area and left it there. Although the investigation took several months, Jackie's evil plot was eventually uncovered after Colin confessed to the police. Even though the truth had already been revealed, the trial didn't begin until 2007, about 3 years after the brutal murder of Paul. In May 2007, 35-year-old Jacqueline Crymble and 31-year-old Roger Ferguson were found guilty of a premeditated crime with the intent to collect insurance money. Jackie was sentenced to 20 years in prison, and Roger received an 18-year sentence. Their accomplice Colin received a 3-year sentence, while Roger's mom, who lied to give her son an alibi, was given 1-year probation. In the end, Jackie did not get the insurance money she killed her husband for. The money was instead given to her children, who had lost both their father and mother in the span of 3 years. Paul Crymble loved his family, and it's truly disheartening that he suffered such a terrible fate because of his wife's greed.